You're listening to the Reds Podcast.
This is episode number 141, part 2 of Do-Over Week with Jon Acuff. If you want to reinvent your work, listen up, because that's what we're talking about.
This is the Red Podcast. Real entrepreneur development. Make more money, work less, and live a life of freedom. No BS advice that really works. Here's your hosts, David Hooper and Laurel Staples.
Jon Acuff is here. This is Do-Over Week. We're celebrating the release of his new book, Do-Over, Rescue Monday, Reinvent Your Work, and Never Get Stuck. What I love about it, Jon, is that this is what you've been doing for the last 18 months. This isn't a memoir of something that happened 50 years ago.
No, and it's not a memoir at all. Like, God forbid, as a 39-year-old, I write a memoir of my, and I'm not saying it can't be done. Like, clearly it can be done, and those books get written, but, like, come on, dude, I'm 39. What am I going to, like,
yeah,
here's what I've learned before I turned 40. Oh, by all means, give us your wisdom.
I love the guys that they have one or two hit records, then there's a greatest hits album.
Oh, yeah, or, like, you can't release one album and do the Christmas album next. Like that, you got to get a catalog together.
You got to pay your dues, and you certainly have. Have we talked about your history before Dave Ramsey? Not many people know how long you've been doing this to get to where you are now.
My background went to school for journalism, Stanford University, and then wrote advertising at a small agency and then at big companies like Staples and Bose and Home Depot. And I really had this great education and creativity from some companies that do it really well. And at the time, I didn't understand it or appreciate it. I was kind of a grumpy employee. But now I look back on it and people say, like, where did you learn how to tweet? I learned it at the Home Depot because I'd go into work and they'd say, we need 12 headlines about granite for an ad in the New York Times by noon, go. And then you have to create.
A question about transferring from something like that to what we're calling your do-over moment. How do you know if something is a true calling or if it's just a fantasy? We talked on Red Podcast 140, which is at redpodcast.com/140, about carrots versus sticks. How do you know that you're moving towards something great?
Well, I think there's a few ways. One, let's go ahead and eliminate that you'll perfectly know. Like the idea that, whenever somebody tells me their 5-year plan or their 10-year plan, I just think that's adorable. Like, you think that's exactly how it's not going to go that way.
It's like projections for your company.
Yeah.
It's not working out like that.
No. And so I think, first off, there's not going to be a perfect sense of this is exactly the thing. I think there's some wise things you can do. I think one of them is get wise counsel from people you know. Somebody who's 10 years ahead of you. Somebody who's 10 years ahead of you can say, hey, when I was your age or when I was in your spot career-wise, I thought these 5 things were important. Only this one is. So you should focus on that. And you should know that going into the next thing. I think people that have you expertise can tell you the truth. That they know you well enough to say, hey, this is, you need to be careful about this. I just had a friend who left this big organization to start his own, and he's got a lot of momentum. And the boss of the big organization said, I'm not going to let you get weird. And he said, well, what do you mean weird? And he said, well, it's weird for a leader to have their own private bathroom. It's weird for them to start doing all these things where they're separated from real people. And so he said, don't get weird. And what my friend did was he realized most people won't tell you if you're getting weird. Like, they feel uncomfortable about it. Like, you're in the, they're scared about it. So he wrote himself a letter of what he would want said to him if he was kind of off the rails. And he gave it to 3 friends and said, if you ever see me off the rails, getting weird, making decisions that aren't good decisions, just hand me this letter and stand there while I read it. That's all you have to do. And so for me, like, having people that can say that to you and you go, I'm thinking about making this decision, and love you enough to go, yeah, you've thought this thing for 10 years. You should finally do it. Why will this time be different? Finally do it. Or to go, man, this is your 15th fantasy, and in an hour you're going to have the 16th one. Don't wreck your life right now this way.
We're in Nashville right now. We're in the South where people are really nice.
Yeah,
and you've
bless
got
your
people, you've got those that are going to agree with everything that you say or not say anything. And I think it's important to have somebody who's going to be honest, and you have to surround yourself with people who are going to do that before you start having some success and they want something from you, because then you don't trust them.
Yeah. Yeah, well, then it becomes a transactional relationship. And so, yeah, I think having people in the space, I think also really researching the space you're trying to jump into. Are there parts of it, the difference between a fantasy and a reality is one isn't true. So if you're going to start a coffee shop, or if you're going to do, if you're going to move to Nashville to become a musician, you should really talk to other musicians and understand what the life is like first, and are you willing to pay some of those dues? The reason I write books is that I believe two things. I believe you're capable of more than you think, and I believe it's going to be harder than you think. And so that's why I wrote Do-Over, because the first part's about hope and permission to dream and realize you get to do this. And it doesn't mean you have to quit your job. There's a million things you can do to kind of hope and work on this, but it's going to take hard work. Part of the time, you see people on the internet go, it's all amazing, and they only talk about the hope part, and then there's no plan. Or they only talk about the plan part, and there's no hope. And so I try to do both. And so I think if you are going to have a do-over moment, really, put some effort into it. That's why I write books too, is that you're going to work for 40 to 50 years, 40 to 50 hours a week. It matters. You shouldn't just phone it in. I don't want you to waste 40 years of your life in the hope that someday you'll live.
Nobody talks about the bad stuff. That's why I think Facebook is so depressing. It's like, hey, I'm in Italy this weekend. Hey, I'm in Tokyo. And nobody's talking about the fact that you had to work 5 jobs to get there, or you just charge $80,000 to your credit card.
Yeah, that's not sexy.
No.
No.
We see the highlight reel. It's a sizzle reel.
Yeah. And part of the problem is guys like me, writers, speakers, musicians, whoever, where there's two things that happen. One, you want to show the inspiration. Hey, look what happened to me. It can happen to you. And two, it gets really messy when you're trying to sell your life as a thing. So when I go, if you want to be a writer, do this. It would be wildly disingenuous of me to say, if you want to be an author just like I am, here's the 4 steps you should do. Because step 1 should be work for a guy named Dave Ramsey who has 7 million radio listeners and will share your book. If I edit that out, how dare I then say to an author out there that's trying to do this and pretend that wasn't a big part? That was a huge part. And so when you start selling your life as the steps to acquire a certain thing in a certain way, it gets really messy and you start to see people fake stuff. And you're right. The thing that I always laugh about is when people post here's today's office, and it's always the beach or it's always the most amazing thing. And I've done that sometimes, but I also try to balance it with hey, here's what Cleveland, Ohio's Hampton Inn next to the highway. Here's the view from that. And today, this is my office. And it's a little sad for me because I love Hampton Inn, but I've got the curtains drawn and I have 9 blog posts to write and I don't feel like writing a single one and
What was it like writing this book? Because a lot of it was done from the Ohio Hampton Inn. It didn't just happen. People think that books just happen too.
It was brutal. I think I've said this before. The editor on this project was a fan of great writing, not a fan of me. And I mean that in the best possible way, in the sense of there's been times when I've tried to get by with charisma or personality or, hey, a little bit of Jon Acuff charm. And
that'll take you to a certain level.
It will. But eventually, if you want to get to the next level, that can't be the thing. You actually have to work hard. Imagine that as a concept. And she would take 1,000-word story and would say, and cut it and say, I don't believe in a joke for a joke's sake. It either serves the audience or it moves the narrative forward, and this does neither. And I would say, well, dang, that's kind of my thing when I want to be lazy, is tell a funny joke, mention pop culture, Kesha, tap dance away. You figure it out, reader. And she wouldn't let me do that. And again, in the moments, I'm not going, oh, thank you. I'm so glad you cut that. In the moments, I'm going, I'm out of words. I don't have another story, and she just cut this one. I don't know what to do. And then I have to go back to the kind of the gymnasium of it all, the gym, and go it's leg day. I got to work. And so, yeah, it was hard, but it was encouraging because I travel and do these meetups where it's one of my favorite things to do right now, where I'd be in Austin or Seattle or San Diego, and it'd be 7 a.m. and 50 people would show up, 60 people would show up, and we'd talk through what it's like to have a do-over. And I'd hear real stories from real people and realize I wrote this book because I needed it. And now it's fun to see that other people do too.
It's cool to have that community. We mentioned it on the last episode, redpodcast.com/140. You've got this community online of a lot of people in the middle of a do-over. What are some of the things that you have learned either from that Facebook group or from meeting with these people one-on-one? Share some stories.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite ones that I put in the book was Sara Harmeyer. She's in Dallas, and she wanted to meet people in Dallas. She wanted to be connected to a community, and she loved to host events, host dinner parties. And so she had her dad build a 20-person table in her backyard, and she invited all her neighbors and said, hey, come to this. And she didn't know them. She just put an invitation in their mailbox, and 81 people walked down the driveway that first night. And since then, she's served dinner to 2,000 people, and they're strangers. So she's at the grocery store, and she meets somebody, and they go, what do you do? And she goes, well, I do this for a job, but what I'm really passionate about is Neighbor's Table. And it's blown up. And they bring it's potluck. Like she said, I'm not here to cook dinner for everyone. That's not my gift. I'm an organizer. And so we went and did one. It was like watching Picasso paint. Like there were 60 people there in her backyard, and she circled us all up and went from person to person, no notes, nothing. And she'd say, this is David Hooper. He lives in Nashville, and the thing he's really excited about is this. And you just saw people light up. And so to see somebody like that go, I don't have to have it all figured out. Like it's a table in my backyard. I'm going to try it. It doesn't have to be this level of success right away. I'm just going to try it.
Laurel and I attended your start event. It's been about 18 months, and she's the one person that I remember. Laurel brought her up to me. You've got to meet this woman. And she was so passionate about it. And I thought it was such a cool idea. And what I thought was really great about it was that it's not just about her. She's showing other people how to do it. Here's how to build a table. Here's how we run it. This woman's starting a movement. It cost her, the price of 50 meals?
Yeah, and it's so true. Somebody once said, you can get anything done if you don't care about who gets the credit. And that's what she's doing. And she's saying, like, here's this special thing that I've figured out. You should figure it out too. So there's a woman here in Nashville who bought a table from Sara, and we had a dinner in her backyard, and she's doing Neighbor's Table. And so they're popping up all over the country. I think you start to think that people that do fun things have something special that's different from you. They don't. They just have the willingness to try, and they do the thing. I mean, she had a table. Everybody has a neighbor that has a mailbox.
Right. Right. And we all have tables in our house.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be a 20-person table.
Mm-mm.
Sun Tzu said, opportunities multiply as they are seized. And another thing I think that's great about Sara is she wasn't thinking about how to monetize something, but because she did what she did, she has all sorts of opportunities to do just that. She could make this a career if she wanted to.
Yeah, I think that's a huge distinction you just made. Jenny, one of the questions she asked me that I hung it up, on a piece of paper over my desk is, how can I help people, not what can I sell people? Because if you'll focus on that, how can I help? You eventually can sell a lot of things to a lot of people if you want to. But if you start with what can I sell people first, you never get to actually helping them. And like that's actually a huge kind of area of shame for me right now. Maybe shame's too strong a word. So many people come up to me and go, you're not monetizing your audience enough, or you're leaving money on the table, or why don't you like do these 7 things with your platform and you could get more money. And sometimes there's this real danger where you start to see people as a platform, you just start to step on them. Could I monetize some more things? Yeah, probably. But not if it's not going to help somebody. I don't want to see my Twitter account as like this piggy bank that I occasionally shake as hard as I can. Yeah. I've sold 2 things in the last 2 years. A do-over calendar with a company that makes really cool calendars, and then the do-over book. And the reason is I don't want to sell it if it's not really going to help somebody. And just because somebody would buy it doesn't mean I'm supposed to create it if it's not what I'm supposed to be doing.
Well, we talked a minute ago about having those people that you trust, and they should let you know, or you want them to let you know when you start losing your head, when you start losing touch. And I think that walking into something such as Neighbor's Table, that's another thing that it's important to lay out before you get successful is, what am I going to do for money? What is success? You don't want to have to show up in like the NASCAR jacket with all the all the ads on it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But there will be opportunities for you to do that.
Yeah. You do have to have a sense of, what might that look like? Because even though you might aim to create things that help people, if you want to sustain it, like that takes finances. I certainly hope that anything I say about making money versus not making money is seen as like, it's a bad thing to make money. No, that's awesome. That's a huge thing. And maybe you're wired for business more than I am. Like maybe your art, instead of writing books, is building businesses that make money from day one. And so I would never want to create this scenario where like the only way to do it is the way I do it, by no means. But you're right. If you want it to be sustainable, You have to know going in, I'm not going to be ashamed of asking somebody to buy something. I'm not going to be ashamed of monetizing it in a way that doesn't ruin the heart of it. And I'm going to get it wrong sometimes. I'm going to have to pull it back.
Working with musicians for so many years, one of the things that I noticed about them is they feel like what they're doing is art. And I couldn't possibly sell something to my friends. I couldn't possibly ask for money to get this. Do you see that with people that are doing a do-over? They've got something like Neighbor's Table, but they're nervous about asking money? And if so, what advice would you have for somebody like that?
100%. And I feel that way too. There's this idea I've been working on about how bravery has two parts. It's doing something awesome and then telling people you did something awesome. And often...
the secondary payoff.
Yeah, the secondary part is really hard because it's really easy to write a book and maybe even self-publish it and maybe even put it on Amazon. It's really hard to tell people you did that and it's a good book and they should like it. There's a lot of musicians that get stuck on that stage. There's a lot of businesses that go out of business because they don't want to bother people with their business, you know? And I think the problem is in our head, we think there's two options. There's humility, where you don't tell anybody anything, and it's just kind of this secret project you have, or you become the cockiest, most arrogant, self-promotional jerk you currently know.
Right.
We think there's only those options, and if fear gets loud and goes and pretends to be humility in those moments.
Right.
And disguises cowardice as humility. And so for me, no, if you created something awesome, you have to share it. We need you to share it. If it's not awesome enough to share yet, ask the friends that love you and go, hey, do I need to go back to the drawing board and work on this more? Or is it so good I need to share it?
You know what I think the issue is, or part of it, think about back when you were a teenager and you liked a girl and you think that you're making it really obvious that you're into her, but she has absolutely no clue. I think a lot of people, when they're coming up with ideas, they think they're selling, being like that 15-year-old kid. He said, well, you know, I sat in the same room as her because we're in class.
Yeah, I said I like that Jodeci song too. I don't know why she didn't, that was a sign.
But I agree with you too, though. There's that other side that we don't want to be. That's the podcaster that has everything that's an affiliate link. And by the way, do this before you're on my podcast. And we ask them to jump through these hoops. So I get it.
Well, and the thing with that is you think people like are reading your Twitter feed like a newspaper and are tired of your tweets that are 5 tweets about your book. They're not reading it like that. You're the only one that's experiencing it like that. So they won't think it's overdone most of the time. Like, this is selling book week for me. The book came out, so I need to say, hey, here's what's happening. Every time I do a meetup in a city, I feel like I wear out the internet. Hey, Austin, I'm coming to Austin. I'm coming to Austin. I'm coming to Austin. And then inevitably I take a photo while we're there, like a prom style, like everybody in. And then I put it on Instagram and 10 people go, I wish I'd known you were coming to Austin. Why didn't you tell me you were coming to Austin? Yeah. And I feel like I said 1,000 times.
Get with it.
Yeah. But so, you need to do it because, nobody's picking up on that secret signal that like I did a soft sell on my blog one time and I'm surprised nobody knew about my album.
I think when you're doing something that's a great match for your passion, such as Neighbor's Table, a lot of this automatically takes care of itself, though. She was so excited about Neighbor's Table that it's going to come out. I mean, she can't stop herself. What are some other people that you've seen that are doing something like that where they're so excited there's no way to shut them up about it?
Jon Acuff, one of the top UFC trainers in the world. He trained this guy, Chuck Liddell, and he has this gym, The Pit, and he's known as like the Pit Master, just a really tough guy. And I put him in the book. We connected because his dream had kind of changed a little bit. He wanted to teach karate to kids and adults, and he realized, wow, people might perceive the Pit, my gym, as this tough place that you only can come in if you're going to gouge somebody's eye out.
Sounds like you might get hurt.
It sounds like you might get hurt. And so he really had to go, okay, my passion to help to go in schools and teach about bullying and why you shouldn't be a bully, like, which the perception, if you look at UFC guys, they get mislabeled. And so his passion to do that, like he wasn't making tons of money going to schools, teaching them about bully programs. Like he was doing that because he loves to do it. There's a huge point in that. I love that you keep bringing up such great things. You have to have it connected to a passion because when everything else doesn't work, that one will still push you forward. And maybe it's only in little increments. And by that, I mean like when the money doesn't show up at the speed you wanted it to, when the fans don't show up, when the opportunities don't show up, like it has to be something that regardless of if it works, you're going to do it because you have to do it.
or when negativity comes in from other people, because not everybody's going to get what you're doing. Your parents might think you're crazy. I know that happened to me when I quit my job. My dad was like, "What are you going to do about insurance? About that 401k?
Yeah, you got teeth, don't you?"
Yeah. I mean, everybody's got this societal stuff and familial stuff that's coming at them, and that makes it even tougher. So you've got to have that passion.
And that's hard, because one of the things people say to you is, "Are you still writing that book? Are you still doing podcasting?" And the word still is this really sharp dagger that goes, because you're clearly failing. Like everyone else sees that. Are you still? And so, yeah, you're going to get some of that. If not outright, people that go, "You're terrible at that." Or, "You gave away a free resource and I hated it. I want my money back." And you go, "Well, it was free, so I don't, I'm sorry you didn't appreciate it."
People don't see that happening to Jon Acuff. And as an example of that, last week I was at a launch party that you did. I met about 10 people while I was there. 6 of them were not from Nashville, which is where the event was. Somebody from Alabama, you had somebody from Michigan who flew down to Nashville to see you speak for about 90 minutes. They don't see that you have to deal with this as well.
Oh, yeah, constantly. I'm so nervous about some of this stuff. I mean, you deal with it both on the internet. Like the thing for me with Twitter, like, God bless the Twitter mute button. Like that is the greatest. Like, oh my, because you get to mute people and they don't know they've been muted. So they just keep being mean to you and you don't see it. It's stuff like that. But I think there's this boundary where you go, if Seth Godin's not reading his reviews, I don't have to read my 1-star reviews either. Like that's silly. But yeah, I have a really hard time with that, where people like will say something mean. I'll obsess on it. First, I research their whole life and come up with this like elaborate response that I don't send. Hopefully, like my wife is near me and goes like, "Why are you lost?" And then the other thing is a big lesson for me in this do-over, and I put it in the book, is that sometimes we look for those people so that they'll confirm a fear we have inside. Like if we're honest, sometimes we look for critics. Like if we're afraid of doing something, if I can find one more person that doesn't think I'm capable of it, now I've got consensus and I can avoid some work that's difficult.
Last 18 months, the time you've been working on do-over, have you thought at all about, I'm just going to ditch this thing?
No way.
Okay, explain why that is.
No way. No, this is what I'm going to do. Like if anything this week, especially launch week, like regardless of what happens this week, I'm not going to stop, because this is what I do.
This is your passion.
This is my passion. So like, and I'm going to build on it. So like next, in the next couple of weeks, I'm going to go to Toronto and I'm going to go to Dayton, Ohio, and I'm going to go to all these places. And you know what? Like maybe 4 people will show up in Toronto. I've never done a meetup there. Maybe it'll be 5 people. But you know what? The second meetup in Toronto will be a little bigger. And the third meetup will be a little bigger. So I'm just going to keep building it because it's what I love doing, regardless of what happens. So no, I haven't. There's definitely been fear, but I haven't. There's this huge difference between fear and regret. We think they're the same. They're not. Regret has a much longer shelf life than fear. Fear is about the moment. Regret is something that can last a long time. So I always ask myself, like, do I want to face the fear of today or the regret of forever?
What regrets do you have?
I regret getting entitled at my last job. I regret, some of the ways I was a jerk to people that worked there. I regret kind of the ego of thinking I knew everything, which I didn't. I regret like practical stuff like not building my email list. People come to events because you sent them an email and they're so happy you sent them an email, and being disorganized and focusing on the sexy thing of Twitter and immediate kind of that little bit of candy versus the hard work of building an email list. I regret that. That was laziness. That was fear.
Well, that really is what the whole book is about, though, right? We have an opportunity to do something over. You don't like the canvas that you've got, paint over it.
Yeah, we all get to do that, and there's practical, fun ways to do that. So that is what the book's about. How do you build these investments?
The book, Do Over, Rescue Monday, Reinvent Your Work, and Never Get Stuck. I got one more episode with you for Do Over Week, and on that episode, just to tease it a little bit, we're going to talk about becoming Jon Acuff. If you want to go to Toronto and have 4 people there, but the next time go back and maybe have 10 or 12 people, how do you do it? That's on the next episode. Jon, thanks for being here for Do Over Week.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You've been listening to Red Podcast, Real Entrepreneur Development. Subscribe today using iTunes, Stitcher, or via RSS at redpodcast.com.